Years ago, I had an interest in a business called Superior Quilt Company. Did anyone ever have their quilt cleaned by Superior Quilt Company? Had your doona or duvet cleaned? We had, mainly in Melbourne. In Sydney, we didn't get much because you don't use too many doonas or duvets up here. Melbourne and Adelaide, actually, was our big market. And it was phenomenal. When I got into that business, they'd never written back. They had over 130,000 people they'd cleaned quilts for, and they'd never written back to them. I went to a carpet cleaning company and I said, hey, if we write out to our client list of 120,000 people at 10,000 of them a month, how much will you pay me to write to 10,000 of them a month? He said, we'll give you 20% of every dollar we make off them. Excellent, thank you. We went to the next company and we said, hey, we've got 120,000 clients. How much would you pay me if I wrote to them all and told them about your window cleaning service? Now, they paid for the mail out, plus they gave me 20%. Sorry, I missed that point. I didn't pay for the mail out as if I was going to use my money. It's their advertising. So how many of you have a huge database of clients? Does anyone have a huge database? And by huge, I can mean 2,000, 3,000. You know, when I bought my first ever restaurant, I wrote out to 4,000 clients of one of my other businesses, giving them all a free bottle of champagne if they came and had dinner at my restaurant. I owned that restaurant 6 weeks. I bought it for $12,000 on a vendor finance of $1,000 a month for 12 months. I sold it for $38,000 6 weeks later. The champagne, by the way, I got on a buy one, get one free deal from the wholesaler. As if I was going to pay for it. I'm a stingy bugger when it comes to running a business. I negotiate hard because 5 minutes of negotiation can save me 4 hours of sales. So what do you do? When are you going to finish this thing called your business? Or for some of you, when are you going to get into it? If you treat your sales job as your business, how are you going to complete on it? When are you going to get it to a point where the sales are happening, whether you go or not? I remember when I was in sales, I hired a telemarketer to work for me, and the company said, but you can't hire someone. I said, why not? They said, but how can you hire them? Well, I'm employing them. Who employs them? Well, you don't. Just shut up. How come she's at your desk? Because I'm never there. I was never at my own desk as a salesperson, right? I was always out selling, because why the hell would you want to be at your desk? So I employed a telemarketer administrator who did all my paperwork for me. She sat in my desk. I paid her out of my wage. They're like, but you can't. So in the end, they let me do that, and hey presto, guess what happened? My sales went up 6 times because how much more productive was I? Did I have to call on every customer every month? No. But when my telemarketer called them, I said, hey, you know, don't worry about it. Marie will call you. She'll take your order every month, and I'll come around every 3rd month. Just check on things are going on. So all of a sudden, I had so much more prospecting time, didn't I? Just different things that you can do. Stop. That was it. The music stopped, so we'll stop too. Okay, what is divide to multiply, folks? Who's got an answer for me? Who's got an answer? How does it work? Jump up to the microphone, please. Anyone else? I want 3 people. I want 3. So if you want to give it, jump up to the mics.
Just an example, if you've got 1 unit and you multiply by 10, you have 10. If you divide that 1 unit into 2 and multiply each of those by 10, you have 20. And if you divide that into 4 by 10, you have 40.
Absolutely. Every time you divide it and then you multiply it out, it definitely does. What's another example? Who's got an example of divide to multiply? Okay, are you as a human being an example of divide to multiply, yes or no? Yes. Yes, how does that work? How many cells were you when you first started? Well, 2 actually. The swimming one and the one waiting there for the swimmer to get there, all right? But you start out as 1 cell, you divide into 2, they divide, ultimately it multiplies. What are some other examples of divide to multiply? Franchising, is that an example of divide to multiply, yes or no? Hello? Yes. Yeah, you divide the business up into many, many different regions and you multiply the effect of the business. What are some other examples of divide to multiply? A manual, yeah, absolutely. You break down the task into every single step and therefore you multiply out the result. What else is an example of leverage? Well, let's take a look. What are some examples of leverage here in this room right now? Microphone, absolutely. Okay, microphone is leverage. It's leveraging my voice. How is this an example of leverage? I write it once, get paid for ever. Okay? This is the whole point of life. The aim of the game is leverage. The aim of the game is to do the work once, get paid for ever. Let's take a look at historically how this has transpired. Because it's vital to understand. If you understand how money is made over time, you'll understand where to go for the future to make more money. At the turn of the century, what age were we in? Prior to industrial, turn of the century, we were still in, not the 2000, the 1900 to 1901, what were we? Agricultural, the agrarian age. Who made the most money in the agrarian age? People that owned the land. If you own the land, by the way, how many of you are landowners now? Wrong. Don't pay your rates for a year, let's see how long you own it for. You just lease the land, folks. You think you own it, but you just have an indefinite lease. The day you stop paying the lease, you stop owning it. Does that make sense? Okay. That's why real estate, what is the word real? Anyone speak Spanish? Real, what is it the word for? Royal. My office in San Francisco was on El Camino Real, Royal Way. Real estate, royal estate. Royalty just leased the land out to people. This is what real estate is. It's a permanent lease. So, just blowing a few myths here, just because, you know, it's a fun thing to do every now and again. So in the agrarian age, you made the most money if you owned the land. Then we went into what age? Someone said it? Industrial age. How did you make the most money at the start of the industrial age? Because there was two eras to the industrial age. The first was using what sort of product? Metal. Does that make sense? The first was anything to do with metal. So how were most of the fortunes made? The Vanderbilts, you know, all of these people, all of these families that made their fortunes using metal, construction in metal. We then moved to what type of construction? Plastics. We moved across from one to the next. Does that make sense? See, when they innovated in making cars, what brought the ability to make cars cheaper and cheaper, cheaper? Using different products. It went away from steel, didn't they? Because to manufacture using steel still costs a lot of money. So now, how many of you own cars that have got plastic bumpers or plastic this or plastic that? They're all plastic these days, aren't they? Yeah. So, who won the agrarian age, by the way? Which country in the world won the agrarian age? The Brits, absolutely. The Brits won because they got the most land, didn't they? By the way, why did the British start trying to go out and find all the land? Thomas Malthus, Christian minister. What did he come across? He found out how many people there were in England and how much food production there was in England. What did he then work out? Hang on, people's growing at a geometric rate. This is only growing at the amount of land. We're going to run out of food. He invented the concept of scarcity, basically. And that's when anyone of you in the room ever studied economics? Congratulations on wasting your time. It is a complete waste of time. Why? Because the first page of every economics textbook said economics is the study of the allocation of scarce resources, based upon two lies. One, that there's such a thing as scarcity. And two, that there's such a thing as a resource. What determines whether something is a resource or not? Same thing that has removed scarcity from our society. Starts with T. Technology. See, oil is a resource currently, isn't it? In 5 or 10 years from now, will oil be a resource anymore? No. What has reduced the consumption levels of oil? Actually, how many of you remember a thing called the Club of Rome? 1971, I think it was, in Rome, a group of scientists, economists, mathematicians, and politicians. Almost forgot them, easily forgotten. They all met in Rome and studied the world and said, we're going to run out of oil in, I think their prediction was 40 years, is that right? You all remember? Their prediction was like 40 years we'll run out of oil. They brought the same group of economists and mathematicians back together in 1990 and asked them, how much oil do we have left? And they said, 90 odd years now. Because we've reduced, technology has removed a lot of things. If we built one high-rise in the centre of Sydney, could we do enough food production to feed the majority of Sydney, yes or no, in a high-rise building? Yeah. Hydroponics, can we grow cows in the building? Absolutely. Can we use the methane from the cows to heat the building? Absolutely. So we have the technology to do all of this stuff now. It's just a matter of now politics to make sure it happens. The reason I bring this up is because if you take a look, the Brits won the agrarian age, okay? What stopped, the agrarian age in my books, when did it stop? At what point in time do we go from agrarian to industrial? The wars. Because all of a sudden, what became important to produce what? Technology. What has leapt medicine ahead in leaps and bounds? War times. Because they say, it's funny, when they talk about the baby boomers generation, because people came back from war, it's nothing to do with that. The infant mortality was halved after the war because they put so much money into medicine. Because what did the governments work out? It's better to fund medicinal research and keep soldiers over there than to keep sending new soldiers. No, just simple. Because I love studying history from an economic standpoint. And the reason I bring this up is because it's vital to understand. If you were to position yourself in a business of the future, you need to understand the past and how we got here. So we hit the industrial age. Those that worked in metal made the most money. By the way, is it reasonable to understand that the majority of farmers have no idea of the simple fact that they're in an outmoded and outdated business? Is that reasonable to understand? At the turn of the century, 95% of people worked the land. Now 3% of people do. Now, if you look to the future, the farming industry, what's our biggest crises right now in the Australian farming industry? Sugarcane. Because the Brazilians are dumping sugar onto the world markets at prices we cannot produce it at. Because we're such an inefficient nation. And yet our government's going to do what? Throw money at it. I'd love them to throw money at small business. Wouldn't that be neat? So I had a meeting with the minister the other day and asked him why they don't do that. Well, we're only a small portfolio. Okay. So in the industrial age, towards the end of the industrial age, who was winning? The first part of the industrial age was won by which nation? Americans. They romped it in with metal production and stuff like that because there was so much happening. Which country won the second part of it? Japan, didn't they? Because they started to use what? After the Second World War, Japan started to take lead because they started to use quality, all of this sort of stuff. They used the plastic. And if you look at balance of trade, let's look at the end of the second part of the industrial age. Balance of trade, where was all the money going to? Over to Japan, wasn't it? The balance of trade of every nation was Japan was making more money than any other nation. The Yanks were sending all their money to Japan and they're all worried about, Japan's got so much power with all this money and so on and so forth. Well, when we moved into the information age, by the way, who's winning the information age? Which country? US, absolutely. What two things is the United States' biggest assets right now? It's 2 pieces of land, 2 places. Silicon Valley is one, absolutely. What's the other one? Well, Silicon Valley is all the software. Hollywood, absolutely. What are they, look at the exports they make from movies. Think about that for a second. How many times did Rupert Murdoch have to make the movie Titanic? Because you all know he owns that one. His company, Fox, owns the majority of Titanic. You think about it, they make it once, And they sell it for how many years and for how many times? This is where the Japanese thought they had it won when they were making a VCR. You know, we make it once, we sell it once. But with a movie, you make it once, you sell it millions of times. Software, you make it once, sell it millions of times. Doesn't even have to be good software. Doesn't even have to be a good movie. You can still sell it so many times. Because I want you to understand, by the way, who has an opinion on what age we will go into next? Has anyone thought about that? What do you think? Health age? Someone had their hand up over here. Anyone else got any thoughts on it? What age would be next? Service, spirituality, knowledge, conservation. What was the other one? Retirement age. Yeah, I believe we'll probably go into the edutainment age. Education and entertainment. Kind of like a leisure age, I suppose. Not certain, but I give that my prediction. Why do I teach you all of this? Very simple. In the information age, if you're going to be in business, what would be one of the best things you could sell? Information. Why? What's it cost you? Very little. Are all of the countries of the world in the information age, by the way? No. If you go to China, what do you want to be selling? Infrastructure. Like, they don't even have roads and stuff. They don't quite need as much of the other stuff if they don't have roads. You need drains and gutters and stuff like that. So you need to be aware of the opportunities. But with leverage, understanding leverage is vital. These are the 4 ways that you can leverage through business. I want you all to call them out for me. Number 1, leverage through. Number 2, leverage through. 3 is leverage through what? And number 4 is leverage through. So these are the 4 things. So leverage through people. That's where we need to be great at building teams. Leverage through systems. That's where we need to be great at documentation. Leverage through marketing. That includes sales, folks. That in sales and marketing. Sales is underneath marketing in my books. It is a function of marketing. And leverage through finance. Obviously, we can finance ourselves into a leveraged situation. So here's an interesting exercise to do. In those 4 areas in your business currently, give yourself a rating out of 10. How well leveraged through other people are you? Rating out of 10. I know it's scary for some of you. You don't know that those round numbers at the bottom of the chart don't come up too well. Just give yourself a rating out of 10. How well leveraged through systems are you at present? How well leveraged through marketing are you at present? And how well leveraged through finance are you at present? And that can mean your ability to finance other people too, not just your ability to borrow money. I mean, I really enjoy the fact that one of my businesses allows me to loan money at 17% every day of the week with 100% security. That's my daughter's money fund. It just goes at 17%. My daughter will have that money every day of the rest of her life. 17%, it's pretty nice. Once there's a couple of million in there for her, she'll be able to live off that for the rest of the time, won't she? Pretty easy. So did anyone get scared by their own gradings of their own business? How many of you are above 5 in each of the 4 areas? Was anyone above 5 in each of the 4 areas? Excellent. A couple of you? Fantastic. Because if you're not, what does it say to you? Okay, how do we get to a 10? How do we leverage ourselves better? This brings up an interesting point about business. Back when the gold rushes were on, who made the most money? Those digging for the gold or those selling stuff to the gold diggers? Selling. Where did Levi Strauss get his business, The guys and gals that own the pubs and the bordellos and the general store and the tent place and the horseshoe guy and all these people made the most money. The challenge is people, when they see a gold rush, they go and start digging. They forget that stop digging and sell pans. Everyone that's panning for gold has to have a pan. So you've got to look at gold rushes and say, okay, what's a gold rush and how do I stand on the side of the road? It's like the young kids that stand on the side of the road with bunches of flowers on Mother's Day. There's going to be a definite market. The question is, will you take advantage of that definite market? It's like we look at the internet gold mine. Has the internet been a big gold mine out there in the marketplace, yes or no? Yeah, or perceived gold mine, should I say. It doesn't need to be a gold mine, it just needs to be a perceived gold mine. So in the perceived gold mine of the internet, who has made the most money? Which companies? The suppliers of software to get onto the internet, absolutely. Who else? Cisco. Oh, the computer companies that provide networks that actually hold up the internet. What else? How about the ISPs? They made a couple of dollars along the way, yes or no? How about the telephone companies? Look at Telstra right now. They're making a few dollars from everyone changing to ISDN and broadband and all of that sort of stuff. What about, well, this is some of the best ones. What about UPS, FedEx, the US Postal Service, Australia Post? Have these companies made a few dollars from this internet revolution, yes or no? Yeah, because you've got to get the stuff. See, and you look at these perceived gold mines. Okay, another perceived gold mine that's been out there, the property investment market. Has that been a perceived gold mine, yes or no? For some people it is a gold mine, for others it's not. That's why I say perceived. So who's made the most money out of the real estate booms, so to speak? Agents, absolutely. Agents have made a fortune out of it. Who else? Banks. And mortgage broking. How many different mortgage